What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. I am back in action after a pretty long Christmas and New Year's break. I actually traveled to 3 different states, one on vacation, and then 2 states to see 2 different sets of people over the holidays. So I am finally back. I got back somewhere around the 2nd and just been kind of chilling and hanging out, and it's been snowing here in Pittsburgh. So it's been crazy, but we are now back in action. And I want to talk about how I build Bromantane stacks for clients. I'm going to break down everything, the history of Bromantane, the MOA, but also how I'm breaking stacks down or formulating stacks with Bromantane in them, how I'm using it with clients in real time, giving you guys some of the results of those stacks, and then how you should think about dosing Bromantane moving forward. What supports this broadcast, as you guys know, are epic nootropic products. Number 1, Cortex stack, powerful nootropic stack. I mean, look, if you want verbal fluency, mental energy, drive you into gear type of brain performance within 30 minutes or however long it takes to onset, which is about 25-30 minutes for most folks, get Cortex, do it at livecortex.com. There's 2 ways you could purchase it. You can either do buy it singularly or do auto ship. Auto ship is the better option, especially if you're new to Cortex, because you'll get it cheaper. And then if for some reason you don't love the stack, you can just cancel it, but you will have gotten it cheaper if you did auto ship. But if you love it, then you just get it shipped to your doorstep every month at the same time for the same price. Nootropics Ground Zero, if you're brand new to nootropics. It's a video course that I created that I wish was out when I was new. But at the same time, I kind of don't wish that it was out, because it not being out had me waste 3 or 4 years and then create a methodology to actually sustainably, continually use nootropics, and that has changed my brain performance and changed my life and allowed me to do a lot in business and in life. GroundZeroLiveCortex.com, masterclass, another video course, 6-year plus mark. So more advanced, more high level stuff, very information dense, very stack dense. Get that at livecortex.com. Last couple things. Look, I am a consultant, as you guys know, on brain performance. Some of the biggest executives and entrepreneurs around the world, it's like I usually get the call when like they're 40 and their brain performance is not what it was 10 years ago, which got them where they are, and they want to go back to that. And or folks that were on stimulants for a long time and it kind of messed up their motivation, and they're at a point now where they really don't function anywhere close to where they used to. My specialty is in repairing chemistry and then optimizing chemistry on the neuroscience side. These are brain engineering consults. Work with me 3.5 months or 6 months. Do that at livecortex.com. Any questions, email me, Ryan at livecortex.com. Okay, so the history. Bromantane was initially used to treat a condition called neurasthenia, which, to put simply, is a weakness of nerves. Closely chemically related to, and I don't think a lot of folks know this, to admantane and memantine. These are chemicals that are often talked about in the nootropic sphere for their serotonergic and dopaminergic properties. Functions usually as a stimulant, bromantane, but not in the traditional sense like an amphetamine. It's more like a cleaner teacrine-esque type of stimulant that also sort of gives you general physical performance enhancing properties. It's banned in many sports organizations as a performance enhancing drug for this reason, for those reasons, and that it kind of physically makes you feel better and perform better. And probably that's because of its main mechanism of action, which is to make you make more dopamine synthesis enzymes or express them, and thus make more dopamine. But also it acts as an actoprotector, which really is kind of indistinguishable from an adaptogen, right? It just settles physiological processes, especially around the brain, in a place where your homeostasis is more balanced or more tuned in. It's really an interesting chemical. And also it has the ability to lower a few pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is like super interesting and not many people talk about. I mean, it's a well-rounded chemical, all in all. The dose range on it really is between 10 on the low end and 80 milligrams on the high end. I've used it in 80 milligrams, both myself and then with folks. My dose is around 30, 40 milligrams of it. And then really on the lower end of that, if I'm going to stack it with other things like racetams or whatever. And it's generally a very powerful compound. So, Bromantane, if I think about the roster of clients that I'm currently working with, business folks, and people that I've worked with in the past, Bromantane has always been in the mix, especially with folks coming off of hardcore pharmaceutical amphetamines and just need to function well and have motivation. I am, actively and have been actively for the last 2.5 years, prescribing, if you will, or formulating nootropic stacks with Bromantane as their base for many people. And I want to give you a couple, but I want to give you the framework for how to use it. So first of all, I guess you have to think about the categories where you would want to use Bromantane. Number one, as a general aid in a situation where you function pretty normally and feel pretty good, an aid in the stimulation to do things, whatever it is that you should do or need to do in your life, Bromantane between 20 and 50 milligrams by itself is going to be pretty useful for that, so long as you take it before like 1 or 2 p.m. because it has the ability to disrupt sleep. In addition to that, if you are working on a dopamine repair protocol, you have identified through either a medication that you took or otherwise that you're not synthesizing dopamine correctly, which a lot of medications actually inhibit the main synthesis enzymes or downregulate the expression of them. They are dopa decarboxylase and tyrosine hydroxylase. You'd want to take Bromantane somewhat consistently on like a 4 or 5 day a week cycle with a couple days off and then back again to remedy that issue. Of course, in a dopamine repair protocol, you probably want to have some other chemicals in the mix, like N-acetylcysteine is a great dopamine stimulating chemical, and a host of other compounds if you want to work on the receptor side. Obviously, 9-methylbicarboline, cordyceps, which a lot of you probably know about and may use for performance enhancement in the gym, that enhances the function of some dopamine receptors, which could also be used in conjunction with Bromantane. But aside from that, so I've used Bromantane in those situations where we need to improve the dopamine profile of a person, and it's been extremely useful. I've really yet to see a case where it hasn't been useful. But in addition to that, just for its stimulant properties, its clean stimulant, kind of non-amphetamine-like properties, it's really useful to stack it with pretty much everything in the nootropics roster, but I'm going to give you a couple stacks, a few, in the following manner. So you would want to have Bromantane dosed pretty high if you're going to stack it with cholinergics or if you're going to stack it with other dopaminergics in the 30 to 50 milligram range. One of the best combinations of nootropics, including Bromantane, that I have used and proven effective with people that are baseline okay on the dopamine side but just need that extra stimulation, is stacking it with phenylpiracetam. Which is another dopamine-centered compound with some cholinergic activity in it as well. Basically, it'll allow you to keep more dopamine around in the synaptic space so that dopamine can bind to receptor sites and provoke the dopaminergic reaction. A good stack would be the following: 50 milligrams Bromantane, 150 milligrams phenylpiracetam, and then your choline source. General recommendation would be 50 to 100 milligrams of CDP choline, because CDP choline also has some dopaminergic properties. And that stack alone will give people some pretty strong stimulation. In fact, for the people that I either work with now or have worked with, that they're not really responding to classical cholinergic nootropics as good as perhaps other people will, and then the roster of things that we would typically take as nootropics enthusiasts, that combination of Bromantane and phenylpiracetam and a choline source is very heavy hitting. In fact, on the good days, like on the days where we know they need to get a lot done, we're usually running Bromantane. In addition to that, you can and should but carefully with this strategy, stack it with cholinergics, because what you would want to do in that case is you would want to have bromantane and some other chemicals working on the dopamine side. Then you'd want to have a cholinergic in the mix working on acetylcholine efficiency or signaling to make you function better on a focus and a memory and a processing capacity. Maybe some other stimulant in the mix too to capitalize on the stimulant effects of bromantane, and then a balancer, which we talk a lot about in Smarter, Better, Faster, which is essentially something that'll balance out a stack to take the stimulation a tad lower than it could be, but just in the right space where you can actually achieve flow. A stack like that would look like this: 40 milligrams bromantane, 700 milligrams aniracetam, choline source, again, general recommendation, 50 to 150 milligrams of, for 50 to 100 milligrams of CDP choline, 100 milligrams of teacrine, adding on to the stimulation in that particular stack, and then throwing in like 50 or 100 milligrams of L-theanine, because that stack, what I've gotten in feedback from using stacks like this without theanine is stack was awesome. I was able to perform well, but there are periods within the effect duration window where I felt like I was overstimulated and focus was a task. Focus was harder than usual. So theanine actually helps balance that out. So stacking it with cholinergics is useful. You just have to kind of dose it in that regard. You could do the same with oxiracetam. You'd have your 40 milligrams bromantane, you'd have 500 to 700 milligrams oxiracetam, 100 milligrams teacrine, you have your 50 to 100 milligrams of CDP choline, and then you have 50 to 100 milligrams of L-theanine in the mix as well. Going back to stacking it with centrally dopaminergics, this is something that's very powerful too for people at general baseline that need to improve functionality, that want to specifically work on the dopaminergic system when they don't have dopamine-centered problems. So if you're just wanting to amp dopamine for the day, you would take a stack like this. And this is a stack that's been useful for clients in this situation that just want to optimize dopamine. 50 milligrams bromantane, a gram of N-acetylcysteine, an entire gram with it, 100 milligrams phenylpiracetam, 50 milligrams L-tyrosine, and 300 milligrams of St. John's wort. St. John's wort. Now, St. John's wort is going to keep some serotonin around, make it signal a little better, but ultimately what it also does is prevent you from clearing dopamine at large capacities. That's a really interesting property of SJW that people don't often talk about. It actually allows you to keep more dopamine around for longer. Now, if you wanted to get more advanced and get an even more powerful dopamine-centered punch around that, you could add either teacrine or dynamine, because they're both going to antagonize the adenosine receptors and promote wakefulness, but at the same time, doing that gets you to release more dopamine. That's why caffeine has a dopaminergic effect to it. It's really through this action of adenosine receptor function. Now, as a last potentially useful and in some cases critical strategy while dosing bromantane and generally a stack of dopaminergics, you may want to have a mucuna supplement, which is essentially standardized L-dopa in a small amount, in a reasonably gradually distributing amount of usable dopamine, so that you're not forcing the synthesis of dopamine and the usage of dopamine without sufficiently repleting kind of the dopamine projection reservoirs, which originate from the ventral tegmental area. All neurotransmitters have reservoirs from which they project, and that is something, as you get deeper into the world of neurochemistry optimization, you kind of have to understand. So taking some mucuna supplement like now makes a pretty good, it's like 15% L-dopa or something per dose. Mucuna supplement is useful in those situations. The same is true for dosing any of the aphenils, which will force you to release more dopamine and keep dopamine in the extracellular spaces, but which could ultimately lead to a temporary reservoir depletion. Having mucuna in the mix is actually a really smart idea. So those three examples are generally how I'm using bromantane with folks. And look, there are many more. I mean, I've had clients come to me with anhedonia from drugs that they've taken in the past, whether recreational or pharmaceutical, and Bromantane was a huge part in recovering the dopaminergic system because anhedonia is so centrally influenced by the transmitter dopamine and its whole, kind of signaling cascades, if you will. So that's how I would use it. If I could explain it by itself in a simple phrase, it would be a stimulant, a clean stimulant, unlike traditional stimulants, that also gives you a physical performance enhancing or strength benefit, and not necessarily like, you're lifting weights, but you feel stronger. That is extremely, extremely safe to take. It should be on the GRAS list in my opinion, because look, I have reviewed and studied and taken and worked with people on and read papers on, so many, chemicals, all of the classical nootropics and more. And while most of them have great safety profiles, there are not many that have as great of a safety profile as Bromantane does. It's a very, very powerful compound. And I take Bromantane, it's funny because I'm doing this video about it because over the course of the last 4 days, I've been finishing up the Nootropics God course finally. And yeah, I've been taking a good bit of Bromantane to do that and staying up to 1 in the morning. Very, very energized. Hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Look, I wanted to tell you, if you want to watch me in a different format with different content, I have a channel. It's the Ryan Michael Ballo channel and a podcast called the RMB Podcast. I will link that channel in the description, but you can search Ryan Michael Ballo or RMB Podcast with a hashtag before it on YouTube, and you should be able to find my podcast. If you can't, just go to ryanmichaelballo.com. ryanmichaelballo.com, my full name.com, and you'll find that podcast. I've recorded a lot of content on that channel prior and deleted a lot of it because it was stuff that's irrelevant to what I want to do with it now. But now, I'm talking about things like psychology. I'm talking about things like relationships. You'll hear me discussing things about business. You'll hear me talk about certainly brain performance, but all of the other stuff that makes a person a high performance individual, philosophical things related to life, just so much. So if you want to see a different take on me and have me talk about some other things that I'm really, really interested in, please go subscribe to that channel. I'll put the link again in the description below, or you can go to ryanmichaelballo.com. You'll see in the blog one of the videos, and you can just sub to the channel that way. Cortex Stack, livecortex.com. Go get some. Support this broadcast. Support the 6 years of content that we have put out for free and the many, many more years to come of content that we will put out for free here on YouTube. Singular or auto ship Nootropics Ground Zero. If you're new to nootropics, you have to get that course. It's going to set the groundwork for you to actually have success using nootropics. Nootropics Masterclass if you want to ascend at the 6-year mark straight away, or if you're already in. And then lastly, again, consults with me. This is what I do. This is what I enjoy. And, spending a good degree of time, 3.5 months or 6 months, tailoring nootropic stacks and otherwise chemicals that are targeted toward performance enhancement, but for your brain and for your physiology, which is kind of my specialty. I'd hate to sound like Tony Robbins, but it will change your life. It'll put you in a place where you're functioning incredibly. And I really enjoy doing that, and then also fixing people's brain chemistry problems that are related to mostly whatever. I've just kind of become a specialist in identifying what's wrong and then aiding in the remedying of it, solidifying the remedying of it, and then optimizing performance on top of that. I have so much more to talk about. I have a lot of experiments that I've been running lately. A lot of microcirculation and anti-inflammatory things that I've been doing. I'm on the Mediterranean diet as of late, and I want to do an entire video explaining how powerful that's been for my performance, my libido, my general brain function, my energy throughout the day, my sleep, my digestion, lots of other things. I ate pretty okay, before getting on it, but quite honestly, the Mediterranean diet is my favorite diet that I've ever been on, and I'm going to explain it to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you next time.